last 16 editions, ICBF takes pride in hosting world-renowned academics, pioneering researchers, influential policymakers, and industry leaders. And thus, it has earned its place as one of the most respected conferences in the country. As we gather here today, we are continuing that proud tradition. At this moment, it is my distinct privilege to welcome our esteemed dignitaries. Their presence here today enriches the conversation that we are going to embark upon. Without further ado, let me request our distinguished dignitaries to grace the stage. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor was supposed to grace this event here, but due to a medical emergency, he could not be here. We hope and pray for his speedy recovery. I take the privilege of inviting our Honorable Director, Dr. Venugopal Rao, to come onto the dais, please. I have the privilege of introducing our respected director to all of you. Professor Venugopal Rao is the director of ICBF Business School, Hyderabad. He is a graduate in economics from Nizam College, Hyderabad, an MBA from Osmania University, and a PhD from Kakatiya University, Warangal. Professor Rao worked in the industry for 11 years before moving to active academics in the year 2002. He joined IBS Hyderabad in the year 2008, and in March 2023, he was promoted as the director of ICBF Business School. IBS, that is ICBF Business School, has close to 5,700 students in the undergraduate, postgraduate, and in PhD programs. And it is a constituent of ICBF Foundation for Higher Education, which is a deemed to be university accredited by NAC with A++ category. Dr. Rao was awarded the Best Faculty Award for Institutional Development in 2017 and in 2019. As the accreditation coordinator of AACSB, he was closely associated with the initial accreditation process, which IBS Hyderabad secured in the year 2020. As a faculty member in the Department of Marketing, he has taught various courses in the MBA and PhD programs. He has close to 35 papers under his belt, and he has presented 14 conference papers and successfully guided 6 PhD scholars at IBS Hyderabad. In his free time, Professor Rao has a passion for reading and he likes to listen to music. I would request Dr. Satish Kumar to welcome Professor Venugopal Rao by presenting a sapling to him. Thank you, sir. May I now request the ICBF convener, Dr. Rajneesh Ranjan Jha, to come onto the dais, please. I would request our Professor Dr. Kameshwar Rao to welcome Dr. Rajneesh by presenting a sapling to him. May I now request our chief guest, Dr. C.K. Gopal Nair, to come onto the dais, please. I would request our area head, Dr. Rajalakshmi Madam, to welcome Dr. Nair by presenting a sapling to him. May I now request our keynote speaker, Dr. Shankar San Basu, to come onto the dais, please. I would request our respected Dean, Dr. D. Satish, to welcome Dr. Basu by presenting a sapling to him. Thank you, everyone. With all the esteemed dignitaries on stage, may I now request all of them to proceed for lighting the lamp. May I now request Dr. V. Satish, our Dean, also to please join us along with our area head. Rajlakshmi Madam. We humbly invoke the blessings of the divine, seeking guidance, wisdom, and inspiration as we embark on this intellectual journey together. May we be granted the clarity to ask the right questions and the courage to explore new ideas. I would now like to request the convener of ICBF 2025, Dr. Rajneesh Ranjan Jha, to come and introduce this conference to everyone.
Thank you, Professor Naseem. Respected dignitaries on the dais, professors and scholars who are participating in the conference, heads of institutions and centers of excellence, IFHE Hyderabad, my faculty colleagues from the finance and accounting departments and all the other departments, students and other guests. Namaste and good morning to all of you. As the convener of ICBF 2025, I welcome to all of you. ICBF International Conference on Business and Finance is a flagship conference of Financial and Accounting Department and IFI Business School, Hyderabad. ICBF was conceived to provide a platform for sharing and discussing the research in finance and to foster a community of impactful researchers in finance. Inspired with the vision of our founder, Sri N.J. Yasaswiji, and powered with finance pedigree of IFI Business School, ICBF is celebrating today its 17th edition. Thanks to the unwavering support received from various intellectuals and scholars throughout the years. Considering the significant transformation that the finance field is going through with the proliferation of information, computing technology and artificial intelligence, the uncertainties facing both the global and Indian markets and economies, we selected the theme Emerging Challenges in Business and Finance for this two-day conference on the 4th and 5th of April 2025. ICBF 2025 received 227 papers from various business schools in India and abroad, which include countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, France, UK, and USA. After scrutiny and an initial review, we have selected 133 papers for presentation in the conference. To be presented in 21 tracks, the two-day conference. In the second phase, these papers would go through a blind review process, and finally, those which pass the quality check of the review process would be published in one of the three ABCD ranked journals, which is associated with IFI University Press. While addressing the broad theme of the conference, ICBF received papers broadly in the areas of corporate finance, corporate governance, asset pricing, behavioral finance, ESG, fintech, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and economics. ICBF 2025 has invited experts from the finance arena to share their thoughts and insights to facilitate identification of the future research agenda in finance. We believe that the policymakers' perspective from our chief guest, Dr. C.K.G. Nair, and academic and consultants' viewpoint from Professor Shankarsan Basu, dilemmas of the industry in our roundtable on Viksit Bharat, and plenary session on digital public infrastructure from an experienced researcher, Professor Vijay Mali Sethi sir, would trigger well-articulated and focused research questions in the mind of everyone who stayed involved in these 2 days. ICBF 2025 rewards research excellence for the best 3 papers carrying cash prizes of rupees 30,000, 20,000, 10,000 respectively. Another feature which we have added to our ICBF is a commodity track. This track will now be a regular feature in our ICBF to nurture and attract researchers focused in the area related to commodities. As a convener of ICBF 2025, I thank all the participants for their encouraging response to attend the conference in person, and I request that they maintain this tempo in future. I wish every paper presenter all the very best for their presentations and encourage them to participate actively in all the events we have lined up during the two-day conference. Thank you everyone.
I would now like to request our respected director, Dr. Venugopal Rao, to address the gathering.
Chief guest of the occasion, Dr. C.K.G. Nair, Advisor Novius Finance and Director NISM. Keynote speaker, Dr. Shankar Basu, Professor at IIM Bangalore. Professor Rajneesh, the convener of the 17th ICBF. Delegates, dignitaries, faculty colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear students. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, ICBF Foundation for Higher Education, faculty members, students, on my personal behalf, I cordially invite you to IBS and the 17th ICBF. I take the privilege of introducing very briefly about the institution for the benefit of those who are visiting us for the first time. ICBF Business School celebrates its 30th year of existence. We started in 1995, and that was the year where management education was dominated by a few government institutions and the university-led affiliated colleges here and there. It was a very small segment. Today, after 30 years, we feel very proud that we are among the top 50 institutions in the country. We are now a constituent of the ICBF Foundation, the university which came into being in December 2008. And 16 years down, the university has grown by leaps and bounds. We have today about 10,000 students on the campus. It will be pertinent to mention the dream of our late founder, Professor N.J. White, who began this institution with a big dream. The dream was to democratize education, which was missing out in those days, and quality education was something that was out of the reach of many a citizen of this country. Today, as we speak, we have 9 business schools, a network of 9 business schools, 11 universities, 7 tech schools, and 7 law schools, with an annual intake of close to 10,000 students, more than 10,000 students. This is possible because of the vision and the dream of one single individual. But we unfortunately lost him in 2011. 13 years down, we still feel his presence here in this campus and across ICBF institutions. And it is his vision that drives and provides us the required energy to move forward. IBS Hyderabad is a premier school ranked by independent agencies, and it is one of the first in the country to get the SAT certification by AMBISA. And one of the first business schools where the AICSB accredited all its 3 programs, and we were the 14th in the country to be accredited by the AACSB. Even today, only 24 schools in the country have the AACSB. About 100 more schools are in the race. We were ranked 39th in the country by the NIRF, which is somewhat becoming a standard for many stakeholders to assess the quality of the inputs and the quality of the college and the processes. We are ranked 39th, and we hope to be in those ranks in the future as well. Competition has intensified with 11 universities in the country and more than 7,000 business schools. It is not an easy task to maintain this competitiveness, where out of the top 39 schools we were ranked, only 14 business schools in the private sector 25 are from either from the IITs or the IIMs. If we rank ourselves, then we are in the top 14 in the country among the private business schools and 39th all over the country. Something that we should all be very proud of as an institution. IFHE, the university was accredited in the third cycle by NAC with a A++ grade and a CGPA of 3.59, and we have also received a rating of A star from CRISIL and from ICRA. I will also like to inform the August audience that we have the world-class Case Research Center in this very campus, and very few in the audience may realize that we are globally number 2 after the Harvard Business School in terms of case sales, and we were rated number 1, I think, in 2024 in terms of the index, the Case Center Index. And out of the top 50 authors globally, 8 of our authors feature in that list, 5 of them in the top 10. It is no wonder that even in his death, the late Devpratim Purkayastha, who was the director of this case center, continues to be globally number 1 case author even today. We lost him during the COVID, unfortunately. He is still the top case author across the world. The school offers programs in BBA, MBA, the doctoral program, PhD, and the executive MBA. As pointed out by Professor Rajneesh, we have close to about, we are touching 6,000 students now, and next year we aim to touch about 6,500 students, which is not a very small number. I am ably assisted and helped by a faculty team of close to 240 faculty and as many support staff and administrative staff to run this massive institute. And I'm really happy to note that today we are all assembled here to inaugurate the conference hosted by the Department of Finance and Accounting. We are one of the largest departments, in fact, the largest in the school. And incidentally, the dean also happens to be from this department at time, and Professor Satish is sitting right in front of me. And we are so glad that this conference has always been one of the finest in terms of its organizing capabilities, and we have received some of the finest papers over the years. And way back in the first edition, I'm made to, I was aware only about a month ago that it was inaugurated by the Nobel Award winner. The first edition was inaugurated by the Nobel laureate Professor Merton Miller, and today, 17 editions down, the conference still continues to attract quality papers and quality authors and quality contributions, and the discussions that happen in this conference are something that we all should be really proud of, and we are very proud of that. I'll take about 5 minutes. I will not, we want to listen to speakers and the chief guest. Something that is disturbing everybody here, and something that is very concerning, because last night most of you would have not missed out the tariff table, or the reciprocal tariff table presented by the US President Donald Trump, and what is it in store for us as a country, and something that we should be really concerned. Should we be really concerned, or should we not be concerned about it? As an education institution, I think we should be really concerned about it. We cannot turn a blind eye. I was reading a story, and I will not hesitate to repeat, excepting Padmavati Madam. Nobody knows the story here. I was going through a small snippet shared by a business traveler who is based out of UK, an Indian who is based in UK. And the time zone difference between UK and China, where he trades, is about 4 hours. It so happened that this gentleman had to go to China and then went back to UK. And at 11 I think PM in the night, he put a message to his Chinese partner. It was just a $250 business deal. It was not a big deal. And I guess some time zone difference, there was a 4-hour time zone difference there. And it was early morning there, and it was not yet early morning here, something like that. And in under 1 minute, the reply came from this 25-year-old Chinese. that yes, sir, your order is in place and will be shipped in 1 hour time from now. Now, what does this story tell us? China and India were equal in 1995 in terms of education. But then China took a lead, and today the ecosystem that China has built in terms of the skills and the communities of skills in around towns and cities is so engaging that you just cannot compete with it. And the author in this story, in this snippet, concludes that the orientation that kids in China receive as early as 8 years old and 9 years old is so important that they have already inculcated what is called as an entrepreneurial orientation into their minds. That is what they are all about. And if China is competing with the likes of US and daring to compete with the likes of US, it is because of this prowess that it has gained in the last 30 years or 25 years. We as a country, I think we can learn something from these examples. And we cannot let go of this demographic dividend and allow it to become a demographic liability. The demographic dividend cannot become a demographic liability. We are the most populous country in this world today. Our population is exceeding China's population, and we are not very happy as far as the per capita is concerned. At $2,937, we are really not very happy. Even Taiwan, with $16,000 per capita, is far ahead of us. We see it as a poor country, a rice-producing country, but Taiwan also has a $16,000 per capita. So what is it that we should be doing to differentiate our country from the others, rather than being bogged down by rhetoric and by loud announcements made by the leading country in this world, namely USA, which has a $25 trillion GDP, that's what it claims, and we at $3.7 trillion, we are nowhere close to it. But can we as a country be independent of the forces of globalization and yet be competitive and call the shots like what China is doing? And it is 10 years time from now, if not tomorrow. And for that, I think one of the most important things is to radically look at the manner in which we are educating our youngsters. And Professor Nair and Professor Shankarshen, I am happy to inform you that at the undergraduate level, we have launched 2 new programs here this year. The BBA in AI and Data Science and the BBA in Cloud Computing and Cybersecurity. And on all other courses that we run here, the tech component or the tech tool component is close to 20%. So we want our graduates and our undergraduates to be skilled, to be technically oriented, to be well versed with the social and the soft skills that are required to survive in this environment, yet be competitive globally. That is what we would like to achieve as an institution. As a private school, we do not receive any funding from anybody. This is entirely run by student fee, and we are very proud of our alumni base, which is close to about 77,000 today. And the undergraduate alumni is close to about 9,000 students. And we are hopeful that in the next 5 years or 10 years of time, we will be able to strongly leverage on our extensive pool of alumni, our strong foundation of our faculty research, the networking that we will achieve through collaborations, and activities and events like these conferences where scholars meet to share their knowledge and best practices. And I sincerely look forward to the 2-day deliberations in this conference, where you'll all come together to share your practices and research. Before moving away, I'm reminded of a quote from Steve Jobs that he gave. We can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? But we have to learn from history also. We'll connect the dots, but we have to learn from history. We cannot allow repeat. That is what happened yesterday in the Rose Garden at the White House, where loud claims have been made that manufacturing will come back to the US, despite knowing historical facts that manufacturing has only brought you down. It is the service sector that will see the growth of any country today. Manufacturing will only pull you down further. So if somebody wants history to repeat, I think we them. But we will not, as a country, allow history to repeat. We should move from farm-based incomes. We should look at services as a sector. Education should be strengthened in this country. And as an institute of national reputation, at IBS, we believe we are in that race. And we will continue to hold our flag high, independent of the competition that is ahead of us. And I seek all your support, the students who are sitting here and the faculty colleagues who are sitting here. And we look forward to a very engaging decade ahead of us. And especially for this conference, let me wish the organizers all the very best. The organizing team led by Professor Rajneesh, Professor Rajalakshmi, I wish you all the very best and look forward to an engaging events that are lined up. I have a long list that I've seen and I'm pretty impressed with the list of eminent people that you have invited. I'm sure these deliberations will add a lot of value to your knowledge and take this knowledge forward. Thank you very much and all the very best once again.
Thank you, sir, for your words and all the encouragement that you have been providing throughout the organization of this event. I would now like to request the co-convener of this conference, Dr. Kameshwar Rao, to introduce our chief guest, Dr. C.K.G. Nayak.
Dr. C.K.G. Nayak is a financial sector policy regulatory law expert of eminence with over 25 years of progressive experience in this area at senior and senior-most levels. He was a member of the Securities Appellate Tribunal during 2016-21. He was also a Secretary, Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission, FSLRC, chaired by Justice B.N. Sri Krishna, Senior Advisor, Capital Markets, Director Capital Markets, and Director Commodity Futures Markets, amongst other positions in the Government of India. During 21-24, he was the Director of National Institute of Securities Market, NISM. He played a significant role in restructuring the monetary policy framework through the Modern Monetary Policy Committee, in bankruptcy reforms through the Bankruptcy Reforms Committee report, and the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, in liberalizing the commodity futures market and merging the Forward Market Commission with SEBI, among other policy reforms to mention. Dr. Nayak has been a member of several committee task forces in the financial sector, including a few SEBI committees. He has also been a member of the reconstituted expert committee appointed by the Honorable Supreme Court on issues relating to Hindenburg Research Report on Adani Group. A PhD in securities market regulation, Dr. Nair writes periodically on financial sector policies, law, regulation, corporate governance, investor protection, and related issues. Currently, he also advises companies, law firms working and practicing in these areas. We look forward to listening to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kamesh, for that nice introduction. I have also come to know a little bit about myself in the process. Dr. Venugopal Rao, Dr. Jha, Dr. Basu, distinguished faculty members and other participants. It's always a pleasure to be in a university campus. The reason particularly for or serving civil servants is the freedom. You get a sense of being a free citizen once you are in the part of the campus. Unlike you attend meetings taken by either senior ministers or senior civil servants or other important people, where we remain very tight-lipped. Unless we are asked to speak, we cannot speak, and if we are asked to speak also, we know the protocols for speaking. There are stringent protocol on what to speak, what not to speak. So being a person who started his career as a teacher I valued these freedoms quite a lot. And in fact, whenever I used to get a chance of speaking out my mind, even in the tight-lipped conversations on policy issues or administrative issues in the corridors of power, I never left a chance to speak my mind out, and created a few enemies, and at the same time created a few friends too, who understood the value of those statements or occasional this thing. I will tell a few stories relating to research on policy making. But before that, a few snapshots on how I became interested in research or the importance of research. I graduated from an affiliated college in a village by Kerala standards. And when I completed, during my postgraduate days in economics in that time, we had altogether maybe about 5 or 6 faculty members, not in economics, total in the college who had doctoral qualifications. So I used to consider it as an important milestone in the journey of an academician to have a PhD, but did not gather the courage because without knowing, and it's not even the university center, you didn't know anybody who had a PhD. One of my teachers had a PhD, and he was very senior and not available to you that for a friendly conversation most of the time. So I waited for my chance. So I joined as a lecturer soon after my post-graduation. And luckily in that college, in the history department, with the economics, history, political science, etc., used to be one department because there were not enough number of sessions for huge departments to be in. Each department had, say, 2 to 6 people, so a 10, 12 people department. There was one professor who was a doctorate, and he was a history professor. And we used to interact quite a lot. He was about to retire. I had just ended the academics. And I used to, after taking his permission, I used to attend some of his classes, which he used to take for the second year postgraduate students in history. And one paper which he used to teach was the rise and fall of Napoleon Bonaparte. And that was one of the papers for the MA history students. And the last session, I don't want to speak like him. I can't, because he had probably the knowledge of grok as we are speaking today, without having to refer to the cell phone, which did not exist during that time. And the last session of his class, the last session ended with this statement: thus, Napoleon Bonaparte was born on 1769, in 1769 on August 15th, as the son of a Corsican couple of Italian origin. Mind you, the paper title was Rise and Fall of Napoleon Bonaparte. So, yeah, it was a very revealing thing. You see, look at the knowledge which this gentleman generates, and whether that knowledge was useful to the students, those students I couldn't ask. So, we can go back in history and ask. Then, after joining the civil services, maybe my seniors found some interest in me in research-based. We call it informed policy making. Don't call it research-based, but you should have reasonable knowledge on a subject when you attempt to make a policy, and which is not very often followed. But at times, whenever you have a chance to do that, or if you have the interest in doing that, you can follow that particular approach. And in fact, my first meeting with my senior itself was a disaster on this question. So he asked me, I was first posted to a semi-research-based policy advisory organization at that time called Bureau of Industrial Cost and Prices. Now and earlier too, it was named Tariff Commission. From Tariff Commission, it became Bureau of Industrial Cost and Prices, and gone back to Tariff Commission. Now I don't know what does it do, because there is no record of its existence is there, but there is no record of any work. But during our time, it was the peak, I would say, because of certain research-oriented or research-minded technocrats heading that, like Dr. Alec, Dr. Kalkar, I joined when Dr. Vijay Kalkar was the chairman, and I happened to have the benefit of his wisdom, but a little bit whatever I could assimilate. And definitely some of the senses of leadership qualities which I could get from. So one of the first conversation which we had was that I was a junior officer. So I was asked to prepare a small note on the small group model in economics, and which is many of you, of course, all of you may be knowing the oligopoly model, which at times used to be called the Chamberlain's model. And I had studied a little bit of these things in my, I told you I studied in an affiliated college in a village. So not that highly studied like in a university research center type of environment. But somehow or other I happened to know it. So I asked my senior, sir, could you please tell me the reason behind that note? Means, what is the purpose? So my senior got very, very angry. He asked me, you will do that work only if I tell you the reason, and you joined the office only today. And then I could see, obviously, the boss, he was about 30 years senior to me, and much senior to me in rank. I was at the beginning, and I was literally in deep trouble. And then I told him, but I was an academic, you know, that freedom comes to you automatically, even to the rescue of you in such critical times. I told him, sir, I can prepare that note in multiple ways. I can prepare in a para, in 1 page, 10 pages, but if I know the background and what is the reason, I can tailor make that note accordingly. That is why he asked. Of course, I will do it, and now with my full freedom, I will prepare the note. So that person completely changed. He thought for a moment and he told me, take a seat. And then he explained to me why he wanted that note. Because we were doing a study on the tire industry, which is supposed to be a cartel, which used to be, and even now, probably. And that was the study about. So in that context, the small group model, he wanted to bring in the theoretical foundation for that thing because a little bit research-oriented policy making. And after that, we worked on two different occasions together, about 7 years together. And whenever he used to tell me about asking for doing some work, and he would first tell me, give me a brief on what is being proposed. And that is another thing. Another episode which comes to my mind is that we were going to attend the Indian Econometric Conference that year held in Aligarh Muslim University. And on January 1st to 3, and January 1st to 3 has got implications in North India. Generally you can't see the person standing next to you. It is so much foggy out there. So we were struggling to find the venues in the Aligarh. It's a very large campus, much larger than this campus in fact. And it's one of the oldest campuses. So they have more than 1,000 acres of land. So so that is the importance of that this thing. So we met two professors while going from Delhi to Aligarh. We met two professors in a train compartment, and one was from Australia and one was from New Zealand. And so many people with goods and services. Services means tea, mumfali, all sort of services which you will get in the train. And goods means tons and tons of material would be done. It was a reserved first-class compartment of a Rajdhani Express going to Calcutta. But after it left 2-3 stations after New Delhi, we could not see face to face. We were sitting just opposite in the same cabin. And when we but luckily before we reached Aligarh, most of this material had exited the compartment, and we could see the face of these two professors, and they were literally pale because they were, because of their skin color. We could see earlier we had seen them how happy they were, and they were mortally scared of what was happening. And then we asked, what is the problem? Are you all right? Yeah, no, we are not all right. We were wondering whether we will be able to get out of the train, because not only that people are getting in, goods and services are also getting in. And from every station, the New Zealander told as many people of New Zealand are trying to get into the train. And So this sort of thing. That is just an experience which what I am using to tell you that you should relate to your research to the real life situations that I will come to at a later stage. But in the conference, that was a time when economics research was, computers had just started coming. Mainframe computers were available only in big university centers, and others were using just some shared PCs of the oldest type PCs. And so we saw two professors were presenting a paper on labor related issues, and their topic happens to synchronize. And they had database also of more or less same period, and methodology was also same. And after both of them presented, there was a big fight between the two professors. And fight is on what? Whose model specification is better specified or more well specified? And the fight is that my R bar square is 0.92, US was only 0.89. And the fight went on for about 15 minutes, and we couldn't settle the dispute. I hope in modern conferences, this fight based on R bar score, at least of individual researchers, may not be there. But I don't know whether the AI-based tools are fighting over their R bar scores these days. And in any case, it's good. I mean, it gives a lot of, it brings a lot of life to the otherwise very dull proceedings when generally in research presentations. And coming to, these are just some of the issues which I thought, which encouraged me to start doing research, but still I could not gather enough courage. And then when we started working seriously in the government on important policy issues, we found research was very much needed if you wanted to actually do a good work of what you are doing. For instance, it started when we took up the issue of liberalization of commodities in India. In fact, liberalizing in terms of a common market situation had already started that effort. At least discussions and debates on that subject had started. But liberalization of futures market came a little bit down the line. And some of you, and why I am highlighting this particular topic is that it is one of your themes where lots of papers may be there on what is happening currently in the commodity futures sphere, and whether there is backwardation or contango, or whether futures prices determine spot prices or vice versa. All those issues may be there. I don't know even what are the live issues as of today, which obviously you will be listening to various researchers. But the issue at that time was, how do we bring in a liberalized policy on an issue which a socialistic policy mindset was very allergic to? And in fact, the report which we are banking upon was called the Cabra Committee report. It was a very interesting report. First of all, it liberalized only, it recommended only liberalizing a few commodities, like the edible oil block and a few more. And by keeping most of the commodities still under the banned list under the Forward Contract Regulation Act, which is a legislation which used to govern the commodity futures at that time. But the most interesting facet of that report was that a very positive recommendation made by the committee was opposed by its chairman. So there was a long dissenting note by the chairman himself, Professor Cabra, who opposed whatever liberalization was proposed by the committee. And there were 118 items on the banned list. In the Forward Contract Regulation Act, there were 118 banned commodities. List contained 118 items. And at times we used to liberalize with a lot of difficulty one commodity a year. But I prepared a cabinet note for liberalizing all the commodity 118 items. So I had to answer a lot of questions to a lot of people. First of all, this report did not recommend. And my answer was this. One, liberalization is only an enablement. It is not allowing you to have futures trading. For that, a lot more conditionalities have to be met, and the final power rests with the regulator. In any case, if it is to be, any contract is to be this thing. But at least people can start doing research on contract specifications, whether we can have proper contracts. So at least those sort of encouragement we will start, and that was one reason. And then second reason was this. If we follow the past approach of liberalizing one commodity a year, then we need 118 years to liberalize all the commodities together. And the secretary coordination who had to brief the cabinet, I did not have the seniority to brief the cabinet directly at that time. Cabinet secretary and secretary coordination together would brief. And for cabinet secretary to call me, I was junior, so secretary coordination called me on this exactly the same issue. So my concluding thing is that, do you want us to wait for 118 years or more? So he told, Mr. Nair, you have convinced me. Let me see whether I can convince the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister of the time was nobody other than Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And not only he was convinced, I don't know whether he needed a briefing, he took a briefing and he got convinced because of the briefing or he was convinced otherwise. He inaugurated, 1 year later, he inaugurated the rice and futures trading, actual trading, operationalization in an exchange, from his family home office, because he was not, because of his knee problem, he was mostly working from home. So from there, futures trading in wheat and rice were inaugurated by Mr. Vajpayee. And I still recall his speech. And though there was a written draft given to him, but he kept it aside and spoke extempore using his, as everybody knows, very mesmeric style of speaking. And he talked about Asadi risk, Asmani risk, and market risk. That was the theme in which he told. And he told all these three types of risk will be fully addressed by an invigorated futures market. And I was so happy that an effort which you have to go against the conventional wisdom could take shape. Whether the market has succeeded in invigorating the commodity futures market into that dimension is a question which is to be asked, which I am sure many of your research papers will be answering those questions. But that policy making was a very satisfying sort of. And second major research effort came when we had to work on the Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission, chaired by Justice B.N. Sri Krishna, former Supreme Court judge. And he, in fact, chaired on Telangana Commission also, which some of you may be knowing, and subsequently. And the only instruction which I got, when other than long, serious debate on various aspects on that, on running I was the member secretary of the commission, so I had to run the commission also in terms of administrative reason. The first instruction and the last instruction I got in that sense from Justice Sri Krishna was only one. We will submit a report, if possible, 1 day earlier, not 1 day later. And I went back with the report to him 1 day earlier, and it was submitted to the then Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, 1 day earlier itself, because I requested his office to give the time, if possible, because this is what Justice Sri Krishna told, if possible, give it 1 day before. And FSLRC report was again a highly research-based work, and the report, though, is very small. We have a draft law also which was done, so we have done research on several jurisdictions using the right documentation, mean the actual official, wherever it's an official documentation. Finally came to a conclusion, whatever is the recommendation. The full recommendations were not accepted. Some of them were accepted, like one is the modern monetary policy framework, where the monetary policy committee-based approach was recommended. But while initially we implemented that reform through an executive order, because we did not want to wait for a long time to happen. Like in many cases, whenever we want to have an urgent policy measure, then we do that ordinance route. And in this case, it was done to an executive route with signing a MOU between the RBI and the government. While making amendment, then we were working on the amendment to the Reserve Bank of India Act to incorporate this particular modern monetary policy framework. Then while reading the preamble of the RBI Act 1934, I found very interesting statement. If you want to see, you can see that, but you have to see the 2015 pre-amended version, which says that the RBI Act was a temporary legislation. It was a Depression era product during the British time. 1934, it was the peak of the Depression, Great Depression. And we had just come out of probably part of the implications of the First World War and about to enter the Second World War. So during that time of uncertain times, so now Professor Rao had started with the uncertain times situation, which we are exactly like in a perfect storm. And but only thing is that the storm was downgraded from a category. It was not a category 5 storm, definitely not, though we had expected probably a category 6 one. But at least as of now, it looks like a category 2 or 3. When we have the secondary effect, probably we will see how does it come out. And when this had to be done, this temporary legislation and in an old language of the 1930s, archaic language, the preamble is written. So there I had to insert a modern monetary policy framework. So I went to my secretary, who was at that time the finance secretary, who was my immediate senior at that thing. I told him, sir, I am not going to work on it. He asked why? Because I can't graft a modern monetary policy framework into a temporary legislation of 1934. So still he did not understand what I am talking of. Then I had the copy of the RBI Act with me. I opened that preamble and page asked him, please read the preamble. So then he was also taken aback. And mind you, this is 2015, and by that time 72 amendments to the RBI Act was already carried out. It was not that RBI Act was never amended. Several amendments were carried out, and most of them post-independence. But this temporary legislation was never removed. But the problem is that, like in government, the mandate of certain work is divided amongst multiple ministries and departments. My department, which was Department of Economic Affairs, had only mandate on monetary policy, not on the rest of the RBI Act provisions. That is with another department. So the secretary asked me, do you have the mandate to amend it? I told, I don't have, but the ministry has. And the minister has. And so let us go to the minister. So he was told, Mr. Jayatili, and he was given the preamble, which he would have read many times, but just for this thing. And then said, we need to change that temporary way. He told, it must be changed. He himself told. So this is another word. And then the bankruptcy reforms. That is where the speed starts. Now that is the third dimension. One dimension of research, I told, it has to be a piece of your life. It has to be about a piece of your life. Second dimension is the speed. When we were talking of the econometric conference, or my early days when the history professor would stop his class with the birth of Napoleon Bonaparte. But now those things have changed. When bankruptcy code, this thing was given, the committee was given a time of 1 year. But 3 months later, we were told by the higher staffs that it has to be finished in 5 months. And that is when you need to work with the speed. Though I had the experience of working one day, submitting a report 1 day before, but then the goalposts were never changed. The goalpost was known well in advance. So here there was a challenge, but 5 months was tough, but we completed it in 8 months. Because 5 more months we took because we had to draft the legislation and brought out a bankruptcy code, and where the functioning of the code, as it is, as time passes, we are not sure how far it is working. So this is how we used to do research in policy work. Whenever we needed to have greater understanding of a subject, we do get that greater understanding. But then somehow, some days that greater understanding is absorbed, assimilated or not assimilated. All this depends on the people concerned who are dealing with that. But now we have come to a situation where Nothing is known. We are in a state of extreme uncertainty. So now, how do you do research under extreme uncertainty is a question. So you may immediately come out with artificial intelligence as an option, LLMs. You have LLMs, you have new technology, new tools which have come. R square has gone, using outmoded computer is gone. You can do it on your computer, your cell phone, many things. All those things are fine. But never forget that all these databases suffer from the same old bias. Because whatever database your artificial intelligence uses is whatever database we have created. And which is right there in the horizon, cloud, internet, wherever you call, social media, wherever you call. It is all the data, and most of them, with the social media, you know, most of them are not even true. There are deep fakes galore. So the artificial intelligence will give you information based on only thing they will give you very fast. Yes. But whether that fast-paced knowledge which is giving is correct, how do you judge? Can your human mind work to make, like earlier we used to have very crude technique to understand the validity of statistical result if the sample size is small and the data set is very small. Like for instance, we will say if the lowest and the highest figures are between 1 and 100, you cannot have an average above 100. For instance, this is a crude example. But with an LLM, can you apply your brain tools on the result from an LLM? I do not know. So the problem is that you need to come out with issues of life. Particularly, I am a regulatory person. Regulators are not very much in favor of having research. And they will say that one of the anger against research is that you will come out with what happened in Indian securities market in 2020, in 2025. It has no meaning. I need to know about tomorrow today. So can you give that speed? And that is a question. And so in the using you have the modern tools, and how do you use these modern tools, and based on the same set of data, even if the tools are modern, how do you address the research questions which are of practical significance, whether it is for policy or for regulation? That is exactly the way you find regulators are running amok. Whenever they find a small problem, they will come out with another regulation or a regulatory amendment, which is like a proverbial saying that to remove a sharp corner, they cut it and create two sharp corners, because the unintended consequences are not very often known when you take policy or regulatory steps in that fast-paced fashion. That is one of the reasons why many of the players in the market are very unhappy with. You are not able to cope up with the speed of change which the regulatory is doing. And in the process, the regulatory is disturbing the market. I used to wonder why even the prudential regulators need to disrupt the market, because prudential regulation is something which you can put it in place in advance. Even if, unless it is a black swan event which you have never envisaged that sort of a situation. But most of the types of risk which a bank or an NBFC type of faces, the central bank has the capacity to understand what are the type of risks and foresee. So you can, even if that is not anywhere near that situation, you can have, okay, if you exceed lending to this particular subsector by X percentage, your prudential norm requires 200% capital provision. Okay, so then the market, the banks and others can factor in that thing and do their business well. Why do you bring in a prudential regulation all of a sudden? The answer is that our governor and deputy governors, some of the deputy governors have been speaking on that in public forum for the last 3 months. And this is not regulation based, this is disrupting market. So, and the reason is that if the research community itself can give certain fast-paced solutions to this sort of life problems which regulators or policymakers are ready to face, we can solve many of these problems. So with these words, let me conclude and wish the ensuing conference all success, and you have great times and great findings on these slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nair. for your amazing stories. We derived a lot of value from it and also the importance of research in policy making. I would now like to request Dr. Bhanu Sirisha to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Shankarsan Basu.
Dr. Sankarshan Basu is currently a professor in the finance and accounting area at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. He has been at IMB since 2002. Between August 22 and September 23, he was the Dean of Amrut Modi School of Management, Ahmedabad University, while on leave from IMB. At IMB, Dr. Basu has been the chairperson of the postgraduate program in public policy and management between 2017 April to 19 March, and chairperson of career development services between April 2012 to March 2015, and the chairperson of alumni relations between January 2007 to September 2011 at IMB. With an honors in statistics from Presidency College, Calcutta at the undergraduate level, MSc in statistics from the IIT Kanpur, and a PhD from the London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, Professor Basu has a primary research and teaching interest in financial markets and quantitative finance, particularly in derivatives and fixed income securities, and insurance and pension issues. He is well published and active in teaching, research, and consulting. Dr. Basu currently serves as an independent director on the board of Federal Bank Limited, as an independent external person on the Risk Management Committee of India International Exchange Limited, and as an independent external person on the Risk Management Committee of India International Clearing Corporation Limited. He has also served on the International Selection Panel for the selection of fellows for the German Chancellor Fellow, a fellowship which is run and administered by the Office of the German Chancellor between 2014 and 2022. He is the founder member of the Indian Finance Association and currently serving as the Vice President of the association since 2024. Also, he served in various roles within the Asia Pacific Risk and Insurance Association, which includes a president's position during the years 2014 and 2015. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from you.
I've had a PowerPoint. So, good morning, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here to deliver this talk broadly on the changing, and I've kind of titled it broadly on the changing financial landscape, financial services landscape in India. Look at it. But first of all, thank you very much, Professor Rao, Dr. Nair, whom I've known for a long time, all other friends out here, other distinguished guests, delegates, students. You know, putting an academic on this side of the mic, the problem is we can speak for the whole day. And then while I cannot go off to sleep, you guys are entitled to go off to sleep. So you guys are most welcome to sleep and not listen to anything that I have to say, except one small problem. Even without the microphone, my voice is loud enough. So there's a small problem with that. But anyway, financial services in India has come a long way. Today, and as Dr. Nair was saying, and in early days, and as Dr. Rao said, like education, financial services has changed dramatically in this country. I'm not going to go that far back. I'm going to look forward, but just to give you an idea, for all of you young people sitting at the back, if I ask you, how many of you would believe that in India you could actually never charge a premium for an IPO? Till 1995 in this country, there was an office called the Office of the Controller of Capital Issues. They would decide how many shares you could issue, and all shares had to be issued at par value. So any company that had been listed up to that point in time, shares were either at 1 rupee or 10 rupees. And more than that, it's not just the price. The government decided how many shares you could issue. It's not about how much capital you needed. To today, being a completely market-driven process and a lot more simplification in the process. The technology has helped, all of that has kind of definitely helped. But the biggest point that I would make, and I'm going to show you some interesting numbers out there, is that how, while we've achieved a huge, distance, we've traversed a huge distance, there's still a lot of it that we have to cover. And most importantly, finance is one of the most, how should I put it, most uncertain of outcomes that come in. So as all of you are, and obviously I teach derivatives, I'm a statistician by training. So one of the things I claim I understand a little more than most of you guys, and it's only a claim, not proven, is that I understand stochastic processes and the applications of stochastic processes and Brownian motion in financial markets a little more. And financial markets is nothing but a Brownian motion, where tomorrow is as good as, or you can explain tomorrow only by what is today, not what you did. Interestingly, life is about that, which we should forget. That what you did in 20 years back, nobody really cares. What you do today is what drives you tomorrow. And therefore, the uncertainty is extremely high. Sir, you referred to history and not repeating history. All the crisis that has happened because we've relied too much on history. And because there are three outcomes that history gives you. Only one is an acceptable outcome. Because if you look at history and you say, okay, the future is going to be history repeating itself, if it does, it's fine, you're safe. But realize there are two scenarios where you will not be there. Because history repeating itself essentially implies something that has happened in the past has a definitive and similar probability of happening in the future. And by extension, something that has not happened has zero probability of happening in the future. But remember, there's always a first time to everything. So how do you define that? In life also, there's a first time to everything. Right? And therefore, there's really no way that purely history will drive the process entirely. Yes, history helps us learn certain things. And what we should learn potentially is the mistakes out of it and we don't repeat it. But that doesn't mean we have to necessarily repeat history in that sense. So I'll start, and this is a very well-known thing. I mean, now very common, all of this. This is Hersh Shefrin, one of Daniel Kahneman's students, talking about Daniel Kahneman, the father of behavioral finance. And effectively, if you read it, it's exactly saying that the market is a mind of its own. There's really no way you can define it. And I mean, there's an exact statement out there from extreme nervousness to hope and all of that. But effectively, what you're talking about is there's really no way to define what is going on in the whole process. We talked about tariffs. On the second, when the tariffs actually came in, and it was known, the markets in India actually did pretty well, given everything. Yesterday and today, I was just checking, in the first hour of the morning, the market's down over 700 points. Now, there's nothing new that has happened between second and fourth. Between first and second, I can understand there was a new issue of the tariffs coming in and the implication of that. Right? But between second and fourth, nothing new has happened. He's not done anything new. He may have formally signed off and all that, but the effective impact was already, the market should have already discounted it. So why is the market reacting today? Nobody really knows. I mean, one would have understood, or one could have potentially explained if the markets had reacted on Tuesday or Wednesday, when this actually came into effect. But why is it reacting on a Friday? I mean, or Thursday after all of it is done? Nobody really knows. And that's what essentially, in some sense, Kahneman and Tversky and Kahneman had said, and which Shefrin has kind of very eloquently put in. It's also equally, replicated or complemented by in a statement by the Nobel laureate Richard Thaler. We believe the market is right. The markets are not always right. Markets are at best a compromise solution. Any market price, any market value is nothing but a compromise solution based on the information, the best amount of information available at that point in time. And as the information changes, the value, the market changes. And therefore, there is nothing right or wrong in that market price. And that's something which becomes very important in understanding how financial markets and the services that generate around it are kind of running. Because if there was a true solution, and if there was a true value, all values and all information should have only, settled down at that point, like an equilibrium solution. The fact is, there is an equilibrium. There is a latent equilibrium. It is just that we don't have the ability to identify that latent equilibrium. What we have is some of the drivers that will run that, and the drivers come from very, very diverse fields, and that's what I want to highlight a little today. That though we are talking out here about financial markets, we are in a finance conference, most of us out here are professionals of finance in some form or the other. Most of the drivers don't really come from finance. They actually come from very different other strata of society, from society, from sociological aspects, from economics and all of that, which kind of come together and get represented in terms of a financial market outcome. So if I want to kind of look at it, challenges come from these things. This is about a broad snapshot of India. But your challenge in the financial market structure comes from there. How do you navigate this? How do you track this? With our population, with our numbers, how do you track this? Right? Life expectancy is increasing, which is very good. We have made huge strides in medical fields and medical inventions and life care and all of it. But that's also brought along with it the longevity problem. Suddenly it's brought about the longevity problem. And the solution to the longevity problem is fundamentally you need money to survive. And hence the financial markets are kind of relevant. One could argue, why is the markets involved out here? But the markets involved because, one classic example is, and it has gone through many, many cycles. The government actually in India, about 20 years back, 22 years back, 21 years back to be precise, actually had to go back and change the way pension funds in India, or pensions in India, the government service operate. From the old pension scheme to the new pension scheme. Because under those estimates at that point, there was reports which had said, and studies which had done, it said that if the government continued with the old pension scheme, by 2035, the pension bill of Government of India alone would be more than the entire receipts of Government of India. And there was really no choice but to shift to some other model. Is the NPS the best one? We don't know. It's not really been tested out in that sense, because thankfully, in India, the NPS has not yet been tested out in any stress scenario. Because we still haven't got to a phase where there is a large-scale market stress and significantly large, payouts happening from the NPS. We've seen 2007, we've seen 2011-12 crisis, we've probably seen now, but the number of payouts from the NPS is still very small because people joined the NPS only in 2004. And those people have not yet come to the retirement age where the benefits of the NPS will have to be paid out. There only, some small numbers are happening which have lateral entries that have happened. So in that sense, we've not really tested out the stress or how the system will react to a stress scenario. And that's where all of that comes in. And that's kind of expected to grow. You have a huge education problem. We talked about education and all of that. 33% of the population is, below 15 years. And we are still a population which is at least having a positive growth. Globally, we are probably not, but in India, we still a population which is having a positive growth, which means that this number is going to go up. And sir, if you say 1995 education was expensive, I don't know what you call education today. Right? Even government organizations, I don't know what we'll call education today then. And this can only go up from here. There is no way this can go down. How do we justify that? And essentially, the problem that happens is that how effectively the financial system responds to these requirements will determine how the whole economy will survive. Because if the system does not respond to this or does not effectively respond to this, the response has to come from the financial sector. What kind of avenues do we have? How do we make it a more realistic thing? How do we actually run the process and yet deliver value in that whole process will kind of come into the picture. And therefore, what effectively drives, and I'll show you some of the interesting things which is kind of contrary to expectation, and we don't know how to explain that as yet, or probably we do, but it's still work to be done. Innovation will drive the whole process. And here is a challenge. Dr. Nair mentioned about his tenure at FNSRC. One of our biggest problems, and one of the problems they were also grappling with, is this whole idea about the Consumer Protection Act and the Consumer Protection Bill in the context of financial services. Some countries have done that, the Twin Peak problem and all that. Because the biggest problem, and this is where we think we know, but we don't. See, consumer protection, as we know, is what? It's about protecting the consumer. So if I buy a bottle of water or I buy a laptop or whatever and it does not work, there is a defined mechanism. I take it back to the manufacturer, I take it back to the seller, and presumably I can get a refund, I can exchange it back, I'm safe. Financial services doesn't work that way. Because the problem is, an action in the financial services industry today will only manifest itself in a good or a bad way 10 or 15 years down the line. And at that point, unfortunately, we don't have a time machine to go back in time and correct it. Right? All other factors, I can correct it in the instant, and therefore I don't have a problem. I mean, I have a problem, but I have a solvable problem. Here, what do we do? And by the way, we've seen this. The UK pension industry went through this, and a number of pension funds, over 200-year-old pension funds had to shut down because through the 90s, these funds had missold pension plans. None of them went bankrupt. What happened was that through the 80s, by the early to mid 90s, people realized that they had sold more than what they could service. And therefore, by law, the government had to come in and step in and say, you cannot do more business till you clear out or till you address these problems. But realize if I have a company which I need to service, but I cannot do new business, it's a sheer shot way of saying you're dead. You only keep servicing till you can service it. Unless I grow, I cannot survive. And I'm not allowing you to take new business, which means I'm essentially killing it. So a number of UK-based pension funds, and UK pension funds go all the way to about 1780s and 1790s and all that. Shut shop because they just did not have the ability to raise capital, raise business, to continue doing business. And that becomes a huge challenge. So how do we innovatively address those issues become the problem. The other thing that also happens is that, and this is again an interesting thing that happens in the markets, it's a perfect example of an OTC environment. Everybody has a specific need. Every one of us in this room have a very specific need. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. And our complexities are very, very different and are very, very unique. And therefore, what kind of solutions we use to kind of address these complexities define how effectively we will be able to run it. Remember, I can always create more complexities. I can create that OTC structure in a financial services, but that comes at a cost, and it is not replicable. So how do I ensure that there is some commonality, yet uniqueness is something which will actually have to be driven in that process per se. So let me show you some interesting data now. Right. This is GDP in India, GDP growth rate in India over a 34-year period since 1991. And predictably so, you had that huge drop, as you can see, in 2020, 2021, which is the COVID effect. No surprises out here, right? This is standard data that I've taken, enough data available, and you can actually explain each of the downturns. Now we're looking back with some market issue, some economic crisis that has happened, and that's, you can look at it there. In 2007 crisis, there is a downturn. We were isolated, we were still insulated as an economy, relatively more than today, and therefore while we do see a downturn, it was still not as bad as you see in the COVID, because we dropped to about 3%, under 4%, whereas here we dropped to about minus 6%. Then this is the growth rate, which means we are literally degrowing at 6%. The data starts in about 1991 when we were just around 1% of the growth rate was around 1%. So there's nothing new in this, right? Now, what would you expect the financial services industry to have, how do you expect the financial services industry to have performed in that COVID period? going down, right? So after all, people didn't have money, so what should happen? And now if I look at and then one easy way to measure the development, two easy ways to look at that in the market is either look at the stock market performance and or look at the banking performance, right? Because these are the two primary sources of financial market performance. I mean, there are obviously other measures, but these are two easy measures that one can look at. And then when I look at that, in the banking sector, we can divide the market story into private and public sector banks. So if I were to tell you that public sector banks did worse off than private sector banks, all of you will say, what are you telling me? You know, our perception, our past experiences tell us that private sector banks outperform public sector banks. But interestingly, it actually happened the other way. So this is actually the monthly returns of the Nifty, and I have deliberately highlighted that part in red. You may not be able to read the numbers from back there, but hopefully you'll be able to see the color, which shows that in March 2020, which is when the lockdown was announced and the first wave of COVID, because everything was suddenly shut down, we had about a 25% drop, minus 25% drop in 25% drop in the Nifty returns for a monthly return. It was negative even later, but effectively that's the largest, and that's a COVID effect that happened. So that was kind of expected and nothing different and nothing new in that. But let me now show you the banking. And I've actually combined both the data out here because I've used the stock market data and I've used the banking performance. Because one argument that I'm using is that after all the performance, and if I look at the stock prices of the banking sector is represented in terms of the price movement that it has. And any organization, if I have this entity, I can kind of represent, I can argue the proxy by saying that the price data is kind of reflecting the performance indicator. So if you look at it, the blue is the public sector banks, the red is the private sector banks. And interestingly, if you see, post when the effect of COVID and afterwards, the public sector banks, PSBs are doing far better. Right? And then just not in value weighted, I can show you in terms of moving average, whichever way you want to look at it, all the data, all the banking data. And this is quarter on quarter. So this was annual, the previous case was annual. If I granularize it, I can do quarter on quarter. I can do equally weighted. All of that. What's happening? There's something very strange that's happening. I mean, contrary to public expectation. Right? And this is where the services story becomes relevant in the markets. All of them are probably moving up, except from, overall the trend is the same. But interestingly, this is doing far better. We don't know. Honestly, I don't think we really know what's happening. But one explanation that is talked about is the use of technology that has come in. Most banks obviously were forced to move into a technology platform. Right? And one of the biggest adapters and the incremental benefit the technology had, players had with technology, was the State Bank of India. State Bank of India transformed itself from being the old monolith banking setup that it is to a very agile, technology-driven bank. The private sector banks are already on the technology platform, so they really didn't upgrade significantly. And that kind of shows up in this thing. So again, the whole point, the observation I was making initially that the outcome in the financial services market or the financial markets is not necessarily an outcome in the financial market. It's more of an outcome from other segments. It's a technology outcome that's kind of happening. You could argue, why should it reflect? But it reflects because technology helps you do better banking. Technology changes the whole equation. And that's what's kind of happened. What they've been able to do is they've been able to reduce the NPS significantly using technology. Apart from the reach, they've also been able to reduce the NPA levels significantly. The absolute numbers may not have come down significantly, but so if you divide it into the stock and the flow has come down significantly. The stock will still take some time to kind of roll over, and then there are some of these large value items still hanging out there, more for other reasons than for a pure banking reason. But that's it. But that's something that is interesting, which is happening in the financial services landscape. And suddenly the landscape kind of completely changes from what we normally expect or normally believe to happen. The normal expectation and belief is that the private sector, the private sector is far more efficient and does deliver better results. In the changing process, the data shows it's not necessarily true. It's actually probably the other way around. And that's something which is very unique that's happening. Will this continue? So the challenge is here now. We know this has happened in the last 5 years, 4 years. Will this continue? I don't know. If it continues, how long will it continue? Even more difficult question. Because obviously, the other players will also start catching up. The question is how much of this gap will remain, how much of an expansion will it happen, how much are you going to fund it, and all of that, that will kind of drive that. But the biggest challenge, and that's the point I want to make, is that we do not know what's going to happen. And that makes it interesting to kind of work out here. So while the landscape is changing, in most other cases, it's a long process. The financial markets, the process is much shorter. Right? So there was this joke which used to come, which I had read years back in Reader's Digest about this timeline. So this is about, and this, well, it was as one of Reader's Digest used to carry the snippets, so it could be a joke, it could be an actual, I think it was an actual snippet or an experience that somebody had written down. So this joke, the story is that the Japanese finance minister was once visiting the treasury of Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi in Tokyo. And for those of you who've been in one of these banks, you'll realize the dealing room is the fanciest and the glossiest place in the bank. So that's like your standard showpiece. Any top visitor, you always take them to the dealing room. For whatever it is, you have all the screens and all this flashy stuff, you take them to the dealing room. Similarly, the finance minister was being walked down the dealing room, and he stopped in front of some trader who was doing some trade, and he asked the trader, "So what are you doing?" He says, "I'm trading on foreign exchange." Good. So how do you decide which? So the conversation goes like this. So how do you decide which foreign exchange, what currency you buy and what currency you sell? So this guy was busy something. He doesn't even bother looking up. He says, "Oh, I take into account, we take into account long-term, short-term, medium-term factors and standard stuff, and we kind of then come up with a choice." The finance minister, in hindsight, should have shut up there, which he didn't, like every politician. And he asks, "Oh, I'm very happy you look at long-term factors. How long is your long-term?" Any guesses? Well, not that bad. 4 hours. But I don't know, it could be 2 minutes, but the answer was that 4 hours. Right? So that's how sensitive it is. And sometimes it's completely unexplainable. I'll tell you another joke, and all you ladies out there, pardon me for using it, because that's how the joke was. And this was actually told to me by, some of you would remember out here, by one of our earlier directors, the late Professor Apte. He's a great person in that sense. So this joke is about, there's this two young traders, fresh out of B school, like a lot of you guys will be in short time, working in the city of London and all of that. These two ladies go out for lunch. And their friends, and on the way they're coming back, they hear a voice from somewhere behind. They turn back and they see there is a frog in the corner of the road next to the pavement, and nobody else. And it's a talking frog. The frog is talking. So one of the girls lift the frog up and say, and the frog says, "You know what? I'm actually not a frog. I am a star trader, equity trader, star trader in a bank. A magician employed by a rival bank has cast a spell on me, and therefore I have been made into this frog." But the person is definitely an escape route. If a beautiful girl like you, any one of you, kiss me, I will revert back to the original self. And as a token of gratitude for that, I'll give you enough tips. You can make a lot of money. Whatever. So this girl with the frog thinks about it for a couple of minutes, and then puts the frog in her bag and starts walking back to the office. Her friend asks her, "Why did you do that? How does it matter? I mean, you don't lose anything. And if it does work out the way he says, you'll make a lot of money. So why did you just try?" She turns back and says, "Probably I will, but I don't know. There's no guarantee. But I'll definitely make more money with a talking frog." So that's how uncertain you can be the best of traders today, but next minute you are useless. So, but you definitely make more money with a talking frog. So that's how uncertain this can kind of be. This is the same example, just showing you on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and some of these things. So if you look at it, this is where some of the challenges come in, and I know I probably do not have too much time, but anyway, I'll try to quickly try to cover some of these things. There's some data, but the question of the data is somewhere else. The data is not to show data. The data question is, if you look at in all these numbers, in the COVID period, you suddenly had so much of liquidity. Suddenly had so much of increase in deposits. What do you do with that money? Right? And you've never had such a scenario. You don't have a place to deploy. Yet you have to give returns. What do you do with it? And that's the uncertainty that typically comes in. So I really don't know what to do with it. I mean, this is actual numbers that has kind of come about. What do I kind of do? I really don't have a solution in that process. Right? And then you have, I can keep on going on this. And this whole decisions that were taken by the MPC in that period. Now, this was unprecedented. It never had happened before. So MPC was also, with all due respect to the MPC, they were also groping in the dark. In fact, but it's not nothing unceremonious to talk about, because unlike, I mean, the same thing in India we did not, but in 2007 the US Fed faced the same problem. Nobody had, and nobody in their living memory had seen a crisis of 2007. The last time it happened was 1929. Nobody remembered it, and nobody was alive from 1929 to tell us what had happened. And we read some of them in history books. So one of the most things happened. The US Fed, in a span of 15 months, cut interest rates 9 times, which is unprecedented, because never you do not cut interest rates that frequently. You obviously cut in, if you change an interest rate, you let the interest rate change to sink in for some time to understand its implications before you do a subsequent action. And if you do too many frequent cuts, and when I want to unwind, I don't know what has impacted what. So at the end of it, when things became a little more stable, but a year or two later, Ben Bernanke was asked in an open press conference as to what happened. So Bernanke's answer was, we actually did not know what to do. And the only thing we knew is we had to make a very large cut. But we were also worried that if we made that large cut in one go, how the market will react, and will the market even survive? So we thought the only other option was, let's do small cuts over a period of time. So everybody's groped in the dark, so it's nothing new. But the question is that you're groping in the dark and you're hoping to kind of address that, and you're addressing problems as they arise. You don't have the benefit of foresight, you don't have the benefit of hindsight either to kind of help you. And that becomes the biggest challenge in the, and the rate at which this market changes, the rate at which this market has been changing, I'm going to skip all of it. The rate at which this market has changed is kind of, has kind of become something which is unprecedented, and therefore I really don't have history to kind of guide me. And in that sense, we're writing our own history per se, right? Because if I look at it just very quickly, broadly you have, if you look at the financial services, these are broadly the financial services sectors. And if I specifically divide it, these are the types of markets where the services exist today, right? Is this an exhaustive list? No idea. As of today, the answer is yes. As I speak at this point, the answer is yes. This is more or less covering the entire financial spectrum today. But will this remain tomorrow? Who knows? And therefore, how do I address that? And how do I, and how nimble-footed should I be? Because how quickly should I be able to unwind and exit and change from one to the other? And also in that context, should I really do it? Because sometimes these are, so in hindsight, and this is also the problem, in hindsight, it's very easy to say something was a major event and something was a minor blip. If I look back today and I said 9/11 was a major event, all of us will agree, nothing great. But standing on 9/11, did we know whether another event like that would happen on 12/11 or not? Or 9/12 or 9/17 or whatever it is, 15 days later, we did not. So at that point, should I change? Should I switch? Should I not? Is an open question that we have. And that, unfortunately, this gap or the time that you have duration to kind of address those have shrunk significantly. Historically, changes would be far more slower. So if you did something, you had the benefit of time to look at that. Today, I don't have that. And that creates a big challenge across the industry per se. And that's where, and I'm not going to, let me just skip all of this because in the interest of time. But let me just kind of quickly pull that together. That is where technology helps. Right? Technology is a great leveler, but technology also, and technology is like fire. Please realize technology is fire. Because technology could be a black box, and you could land up like an indecent scenario. A simple transaction over years causing you to lose over officially 2.35% of the net worth. We have not seen the end of the tunnel. I don't think we've been anywhere close to the end of the tunnel. We may have just entered the tunnel. So we don't know what's happening there. But at the same time, technology also helps because technology changes, revolutionary thing. The biggest thing that has happened is, again, good and bad. The biggest thing that has happened is it has made all of us act easy, given better understand, hopefully better, okay, I won't use the better word. Better, given easier access to financial markets. Right? At the same time, has it given us better understanding? Realize what SEBI is doing right now. And in fairness, apart from all the craziness, there's one thing SEBI is doing correct. I'll give it to them. They're going after the so-called influencers. Because SEBI's own report says in the last 5 years, 90% of retail derivative traders have been losing money in the market. Yet that market is growing. How is this even possible? Data does not lie. So market has grown. Every year the market has grown at a certain rate. Yet 90% of your retail investors are losing money. That's influencer problem. So why is it happening? Because suddenly everybody is an expert by listening to 2 YouTube videos and 3 WhatsApp chats. Which is what happened because of technology. And that's the downside, but that's why it's a technology is like fire. If you don't use it properly, you can kind of get burned in it. But if you use technology properly, you do have a lot more access. And then therefore you have a lot more clarity and all of that. And in that context, technology will also evolve. So AI becomes a new driver. But AI is, in some sense, it's like what you put in comes out. So if you put in garbage, the output is also garbage. So, in the changing landscape, technology and AI will play a much stronger and a much larger role in this context. But our real challenge is to be ensuring what we put into that whole process and not run a black box. We need to understand, and it's good to make less amount of money if we don't understand. It's good not to be in businesses. So obviously I don't believe the statement entirely, but as Warren Buffett says, that he doesn't understand derivatives and therefore he doesn't invest in derivatives. I take it with a pinch of salt because you can't probably run an industry and an empire of that size without that. But I take the essence of what he says, that I don't do anything which I don't really understand well. And I think that should be the driver. So while the landscape will keep on changing, and this is one of the few things, obviously in the limited time I could only show you, but effectively we need to understand what the changes are and we need to understand what we are doing. It is not necessary that we all need to rush in and be the first mover and try to be the first player and take credit for the being. I will not name the institutions, but it's a very classic story. In India, we've had in the banking industry, there are certain entities which always want to have that first mover tag. And there is another set of entities who never become the first mover tag, but they are there for the longer term. In the long term, the second is a better solution. And while the landscape will keep changing, AI and technology will drive the process. I think that's where we will actually have to congregate to that. We should actually ensure we get into the process where we understand what we are doing. Landscape is going to change and we don't know how it will change. And therefore, you don't jump into, so just because it's hot, it's summer, and it's summer, and just because you see some water out there, you don't jump into it. The water could be 1 foot deep, the water could be 100 feet deep. You better figure out first before you jump into it. So I'll stop with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation highlighting the changing landscape in financial sector in India. I would now like to request our chief guest, Dr. C.K.G. Nair, our keynote speaker, Dr. Shankarsan Basu, our Honorable Director, Dr. Venugopal Rao, and our ICBF convener, Dr. Rajneesh Ranjan Jha, to come onto the stage to release the book of abstracts. I now request our HOD, Madam Rajalakshmi, to felicitate our chief guest, Dr. CKG Nair, with a memento. I would request our director, Dr. Venugopal Rao, to felicitate our keynote speaker, Dr. Shankar Sen Basu, with a memento. I request Dr. Kameshwar Rao to felicitate the convener of ICBF 2025, Dr. Rajneesh, with a memento. I would request Dr. Satish Kumar to come and do the honor. I would request Dr. Bhanu Shirisha. I would request Bhanu Shirisha to come onto the dais and present the memento to our director. I now request Dr. Satish Kumar to come onto the dais to give the vote of thanks.
A very good morning to all of you. I know we are already running late, so I will not take much of your time. But I have a formal duty to fulfill to give a formal vote of thanks to all my colleagues in the who are kind of contributing to make the conference a huge success. So I, on behalf of the convening team, which includes Professor Rajneesh, Professor Kamesh, Professor Bhanu, and Professor Sagar, who is unfortunately not with us today, take the honor of delivering this special vote of thanks for this ICBF. First and foremost, my deepest gratitude to esteemed speakers, Professor CKG Nair and Professor Sankarshan Basu, for their insightful discussions and gratifying discussions today. Their expertise and analysis have enriched our understanding of critical issues in key emerging area of research today in finance and banking literature. We extend our deepest appreciation to the esteemed leaders of our institutions, Dr. L.S. Ganesh, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of IFHE, Dr. Vijayalakshmi, Registrar IFHE, Dr. Venugopal Rao, Director IBS, and Dr. D. Satish, Dean MBA, for their invaluable support and encouragement throughout this journey. The commitment to nurturing intellectual growth and facilitating platforms such as this conference played a great role in advancing the meaningful discussions over the next 2 days. We'll also like to express our sincere appreciation to the sponsors, the Multi-Commodity Exchange, who is our research partner, Wiley, McGraw-Hill, Cengage Publications, and Life Insurance Corporation of India. And we had a pleasant surprise where in the last month we had a sponsor who is the hydration partner, who actually brought the conference to life by sponsoring huge number of water bottles for the event of the next couple of days. We also take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the esteemed session chairs who heartily and readily accepted our invitations to host the sessions and give very constructive feedback to the participants over the next couple of days. An event of this meaningful size requires a lot of meticulous planning and great execution such that it comes to life at a big stage like this. In that regard, I'd like to thank our HOD, Professor Rajalakshmi, who conducted several meetings to ensure that all the colleagues in the Department of Finance were sailing on the same boat. So I'd like to congratulate and thank each colleague in the Department of Finance and Accounting who were available for all the impromptu meetings and give their conditional or unconditional support throughout the conference, be it reviewing the article for the conference or be it some sort of volunteering for certain committees that we had formed of late. So a big thanks to all of you. A special appreciation goes to the research scholars and the student volunteers who've been playing a big role behind the scenes and making this event happen as it is today on the stage. So last but certainly not the least, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to the wonderful audience, which is you, to make this event a huge success. As it is rightly said by somebody, though the keynote speaker and the guest of big role, but the conference is never complete or of that big size without the participants, the delegates like you. We look forward to have great sessions over the next couple of days, and may you get good feedback, good collaborations in this ICBF. And we just want to thank you, all of you, for sparing your valuable time and making it to the conference at this juncture. Thank you so much.
Lastly, I would request everyone to rise for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
I request all the members from the Department of Finance, all the participants to please come onto the dais for a group photo along with the dignitaries. After this photo, you can join us for tea in the dome. I request